Global goals for noble souls, transforming our world to a better wonder to behold. No poverty, zero hunger, for the elderly or younger. Good health and well-being, good education, empowering women to become sensation. Clean water and sanitation, is it not the right of every nation? Economic growth, inclusive and sustained, through industry, innovation and infrastructure be gained. Reduce inequality for sure. Make cities and human settlements safe and secure. Take urgent actions to combat climate change. Conserve like below water, land, and shore. We do not estrange. Justice for all, oh peaceful and empathetic nations. Let us all partner to achieve these goals and provide much needed salvation.
Good morning, good evening, namaste, hola, bonjour, geremet, derve, and maraban. This is Namya Joshi, your host for the day. Welcome to episode 121 of the podcast Each One Teach 10, An Amazing World of STEM, an inspiring venture where we'll be discussing that STEM is a part of every day for every kid. We all will learn together how to build a STEM culture. Well, I'm very thrilled to welcome Olga Kazarina, who is a award-winning winner, EdTech specialist, ISTE plus ASCD community leader, and Google certified trainer, coach, GEG leader, AI fellow, and educator with over a decade of international experience. From her roots as a classroom teacher in Chile to her current role as a customer success manager and community builder at Genially, she has dedicated her career to empowering educators. And she also specializes in the strategic and ethical integration of generation and generative AI and is passionate about fostering computational thinking in young learners. She's also the recipient of ISTE 22 Watch Award and was a facilitator in the Guinness World Record-breaking Capacita Plus Google Cloud AI event. Well, it's an absolute honor to have you here, Olga. So how are you doing today?
Hi, Nam. It's such a pleasure to be joining you here. I'm doing really well, right? So it's great to connect internationally with you. And again, congratulations being such a great podcaster, right? And launching this international series and promoting STEAM around the world.
Thank you so much. That's a pleasure. Thank you for being on the podcast. Right. So how is the weather where you are today, right now?
Well, today is actually about, I think, 30 degrees Celsius. It's pretty hot. It's summer here in Santiago, Chile, right? Where I'm living and where I'm currently
Yeah.
connected from. So it's pretty sunny, right? We are like in the middle of, yeah, I guess of the summer. Yeah, because it's like a different hemisphere. What about
Absolutely.
where you are, Namia?
Yeah, I'm in Jyväskylä, Finland, and the weather is minus 17 degrees Celsius right now. But of course, like because of the centrally heating system, you don't feel it. But it was
Yeah.
really sunny today as well, because it's really rare to see sunlight when it's winters. So it's been good weather, but yeah, it's because the sunnier it is, the colder it gets because the ice is melting. So you have to pack yourself up with good layers. But yeah, summer feels like a dream. Maybe after some months, I can experience that same
Yeah.
temperature.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I originally actually come from Russia, but I've been living in Chile for the past 10 years, right? So in Russia, we also experience very low temperatures, right? So I completely agree, like on the importance of central heating and also like wearing multiple layers, right, to stay
Yeah.
warm outside.
Absolutely. Thank you. Right. So let's get started. Well,
Yay.
Olga, I have a question for you. Like you've worked across cultures, classrooms, and you began your journey in the classroom and then moved across different international education systems. And so when you look back at your journey, how have those diverse experiences shaped your philosophy of learning and teaching? And was there a particular moment, classroom, or learner that changed how you see education?
Thank you so much for the great question. One of my favorite, right? Just to show you like the whole journey, because I actually graduated from university back in Russia. And then I actually studied English and Japanese. So this is like my specialization, right? But my main, let's say, professional career has been in English and Spanish, right? So first of all, I studied teaching English at the university. That's called Santo Tomas University here at Santiago, right? So I was in the classroom, but mostly with adult learners, right? From different, let's say, professional careers, right? And then I switched to classroom teaching, where I was teaching first and second grade. And at a certain point, I was also teaching preschool. And then I switched to the role of EdTech coach that I really like, because basically my job was helping teachers discovering those amazing EdTech tools, right? Integrating robotics into their curriculum and basically helping them and scaffolding them in the classroom, right? So, let's put it this way. I was coming from more, let's say, traditional, kind of classical learning environment back in Russia. But then here in Chile, mostly I have been working for international baccalaureate schools. So it really brought this global mindset to the way I see teaching and the way I also see every child, more like a wholesome or like a whole approach to teaching, right? So it's not only consuming content or teaching content, it's also attuning to the needs of the child, also getting to know every student, every child as an individual. So that's something really made a big, I think, switch in my mindset, right? So every student matters and every student can be so different, right? Every student has their own needs, and we need to do this so-called like teaching magic to adjust the planning and to make sure we find the approach to every student.
Absolutely, that's really well said. And that also talks about personalized learning and how every student can be taught at their own pace. It feels like, a difficult thing and not achievable at first, but when you realize the kind of tools that can support you to do that, I think it gets easier because if you have a passion towards helping the students that you're teaching, then I think nothing seems impossible. And you share like how your journey across different education systems has really deeply shaped the way you see learning and teaching, like starting your graduation in Russia, then building your professional path through English and Spanish. So you've experienced education from, different multiple cultural and linguistic perspective. And also when you talk about, working in edtech while training teachers, you've been able to understand how they can become the forerunners and how they can build that strong global mindset and a more holistic approach to education where learning goes beyond the subjects and like you rightly said focuses on the whole child and their holistic development in both ways.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I again second that. And I also, well, after I was helping teachers and coaching teachers, right, this is where I started working for different edtech companies because I bring that educator's head, right? So I can help many teachers at the same time, right? So I can, let's say, multiply my efforts. And also I think what I have seen, like as you mentioned, as I come from Russia, live in Chile, right, but work mostly now, like I work for a Spanish company, Genially, but my market is US and Canada. So it brings that global connection and also the importance of human connection, both in the classroom and how also those edtech tools can connect us. Let's say they become not the goal, but a certain kind of like bridge in the learning, right? So that's something basically I fully support, right? So we are not using technology for the sake of technology. We're using it as a certain mean, right? Or let's say a bridge, right? To make learning easier or maybe more accessible, right? Or basically more personalized to each student.
Absolutely, and you just have to find the right tool and you're off to go.
Yeah, and for that we need like right criteria, right? By the way, I'm going to also give a webinar very soon with EACD, right, on this EdTech index, how we can actually go through vetting process from teachers' perspective, because now there are so many tools, so many EdTech solutions, also with rapid development of AI. So
Mm.
sometimes it does become a bit overwhelming for teachers or for educational leaders as well, right?
Absolutely. That's really well said. And also, like talking about that, many educators find it challenging, to move from being a teacher in the classroom to becoming a coach, a mentor, or leader for other educators. That shift often requires the willpower, a deep shift in their mindset, or even the purpose of why you started. So, in your own journey, what mindset shifts helped you move from teaching students to empowering other teachers? And was there a moment when you realized that your role had changed, from delivering knowledge to guiding the growth?
Thank you so much for this question. Well, basically, I switched like from how I teach my students in the classroom, right? When I was in the first or second grade, and I had about like 28, 30 students in the classroom. And then how can I empower my peers? And it happened during the pandemic because I always had this passion for technology. I've always been tech savvy because I'm a naturally curious person. And then I realized some teachers were struggling, were falling a bit behind, right? And they really needed a help with a tool, right? With like troubleshooting, also the way they can integrate it within classroom. And like I think I see teachers as heroes. That they just don't wear caps, because there's so many things to do in a day, whether it's a virtual classroom or in person or hybrid one, right? So there isn't like, let's say, free time for teachers to quickly upskill. So they also need a person, like certain kind of peer or coach who could also take their time to figure things out and then present to the teachers the why and the how. Because even though I think teachers understand the why of technology, right? The same with AI, but then the how takes a lot of effort, right? And there is also a certain kind of, I would say, maybe more than fear, like being kind of precautious, because when we work with students, especially with elementary students, right, we need to be extra careful the way we present information, right? Who can have access to information, who can interact with those students, right? So I think that kind of put me in the position of leader, right? And leader meaning not the person who has all the answers, it meaning just another learner, like another learner who is eager to enjoy the learning process and also share the learning, let's say, results or outcomes with others, so those others can save their time and also can benefit, right, from that learning.
True. And you really explained how that transition, when you saw many educators struggling, that's when you felt that strong urge to support them. And that was your reason of, stepping into that field. And despite, teachers seeing that they have heavy workload and very less free time, you decided to step in because teachers needed those guidance, not just the tools. Because if there's no one to tell them like how to use it, they won't know because the why is there, but like you said, the how takes time. And once that's done, I feel it'll help them overcome the fear and hesitation that exists. And that's really beautifully stated that you placed yourself both as a learner and a leader going alongside them and sharing your knowledge to build their confidence because that is something I relate to. I believe in sharing, learning, and growing together. Like early on in my journey, whatever I was learning, I kept on sharing that with my peers, and I still continue to do that now because I feel you're a lifelong learner. You keep on learning, and the more you share, you get to collaborate and network with people, and you get to learn from them as well. So it's always nice to share and learn together.
Yeah, I completely second that because in the end of the day, I think like that time in the pandemic was very beautiful, but also difficult, right? Quite challenging. And then about like learning and teaching, I truly believe when we truly know something, right? This is when we can teach that, like there's the pyramid, right? Of learning, for example, when we read information, I think we get about like, between 10 and 20% depends how much attention we pay, right? When we need to replicate it and so on. So at the top of that pyramid is like when we're able to teach it to someone, this is where we start like questioning our own knowledge, right? And this is the moment where we really learn something like to its depths.
Absolutely. True that. Right. So you've designed and led many trainings and workshops for educators across the world. Among those experiences, is there one moment or one training that truly stayed with you where you saw a visible shift in teacher practice or student learning? And what exactly, made that experience powerful for you and for people around you?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you so much for this question. But I wanted to bring this example, right, of Guinness World Record breaking cloud Google Cloud AI event, right, that was focused on basically sharing AI skills with students, like how you could upskill quickly, right, the tools, and we talked about machine learning, right, like basically the behind the doors of generative AI. I think it was very impactful because we did it at the same time in 20 countries, right? So this is one of the, let's say, the biggest moment, right? But then, to be honest, like if I think about the most impact for me personally, professionally, this is when I do computational thinking workshops with robotics. So I have those little robots actually behind me in the closet here, right? They're called B-bots. So computational thinking is not teaching kids how to code. It's teaching kids how to think, right? How to build strategy, right? How to basically kind of pencil that algorithms in their minds before coming to the robot and pressing the buttons. So this is what I greatly enjoyed with a smaller groups of teachers in different schools around Chile, and also when I travel to US. These are, let's say, my favorite presentations are on that and computational thinking, the importance of computational thinking in today's world, right? Also related, by the way, to the use of technology or Gen AI, or even like finding a road back home, right? So this is all about computational thinking, which is about patterns, about decomposition, about recognition as well. So I think this is one of my, if I would say like personally, right, high impact training example. If I would say, let's say worldly, right, that would be the Guinness World Record because it happened in 20 countries.
That's huge. Honestly, that's really commendable. But also how you shared the example of computational thinking workshops where you use like robotics to help shift the focus from simply coding to truly thinking. That's really appreciable because when we see about the future workforce, they need to know skills and they need to understand the entire process. So it's not just that you're knowing how to code, but you need to know how to apply that knowledge and also how you can work together as teams. Because right now, when we see AI alongside coding, so you need to know how to prompt better, how to work alongside coding with AI, and be the one who is not being supervised by AI, but supervising AI. So, for knowing all that stuff, you need to start at a very young age. So, I think this is a really good example of, sharing knowledge with students and starting at a young age where they are pestered about it in a good way, that yeah, that's how you can start, and they're being reinforced the similar values at a young age, because I think when you're young you can learn skills faster and then you can keep on enhancing them. So I feel this is a really good example of helping them develop problem solving skills, recognizing patterns and thinking logically, which will really help them in the coming future where they have to choose their careers.
Yeah, that's for sure, because then we also acquire those social skills or soft skills, right? So it's not only about hard skills. And I think there are a couple of like theories nowadays about like career development. Like we can learn basically any hard skill in 3, 4, 5 years, right? But if we don't have soft skills, we might still fail, because even though we know we are, let's say, subject matters, like we know the expertise of this subject, but then we cannot really apply it with others because we need to know how to learn in teams, how to present information, how to collaborate, and things like that. And through robotics, through sharing those little bee bots, right, through play-based learning, right, this is how kids can also acquire those skills, right? So it can really help them thrive in the future. And as you mentioned, I mean, like now with Gen AI, like we learn how to prompt better, but like we also have to be we have to make sure we're also good critical thinkers, right? Because then Gen AI can generate many things, but who is going to assess like what's good, what's not good, right? And this is where this critical thinking comes into play. And that apparently I didn't know that before when I was a student, right? But now I know that we can explicitly teach critical thinking. We can, let's say, provide certain scenarios to our students, right? So they can acquire those skills already in the school, right? So it's going to be easier. And also, I think in certain contexts, better for students, right, to acquire those critical thinking, like let's say in more controlled, safe environment in school, so they can apply it to real life contexts.
Absolutely. That's all about situation based learning, that you're able to strengthen your mindset and you know that if you are in a tough situation, personal, professional life, you would know how to get out of it. When you
Mhm.
actually, it's like simulations in a way that you're trying it out
Exactly.
and then you're actually applying it when it happens.
Yes, like real life simulation, right? So we can prep our students while still in school,
Mhm.
right? And then while they can encounter some difficulties, some complex situations in real life, right? They're already going to be prepared to solve it in the best way.
Absolutely. So, as we are talking about AI, you work closely with educators on strategic and ethical integration of generative AI. And right now, like AI is surrounded with both the sides of it. People are really happy about it as well. But when they think more about it, there's like, okay, now what do we do? Like, it's kind of dangerous as well in a way. So, from your
Mhm.
experience, what are the most common misconceptions educators have about AI?
Yeah, I think one of the most common misconceptions, like what I see and hear quite often, especially on social media, right, that the AI will replace teachers, right? Some teachers are quite hesitant to use AI because they think probably if they kind of like ignore it, if they like kind of put it under the rug, right, then students are not going to know about it. But the reality, what I have seen with students, even like in middle school, right, not only in high school, like all the students are using AI already. So it's actually adds another, let's say, responsibility to teachers already very busy day and very heavy workload, right? To upskill, right? And use AI as a co-pilot, right? Not their pilot, right? So the teacher can use AI to their own benefit, for example, saving time and planning. It takes a lot of time, maybe even grading as assistant, not as a decision maker, right? So it could handle this administrative heavy lifting, right? So teachers can be also more human. And what I really like a phrase actually of my husband, right? So you could use AI to your own benefit, right? To save time and planning and so on. So then you have more time to bond, right? Because as he says, for example, AI can do many things, but there is one thing it cannot do. It cannot hug a student or it cannot provide a bonding moment, right? And that's why we are there in the school, right? So we can also get to know each other as humans and bring that very special connection.
That's really deep because, like, I think this is one thing that still people agree on, that there is no empathy and there is no social emotional connection that AI can bring in that a human can. And I feel like you pointed out one of the most misconceptions that people believe is the fear of AI replacing teachers, especially as students are already using it. But I feel like if teachers will understand how to use it for their purpose well and help students realize what they can use it for at a young age, again, it's all about reinforcement. So if you talked about the efficient use, we will start using it efficiently. If you won't know what it is being used for students as well, so they have to know about their own benefits, but also how can their students learn about using the ethical way of implementing AI in their learning. And of course, you highlighted that again, the human connection in learning can never be replaced, and the bonding moments between teachers and students is something that truly shape the learning experience. So if teachers have an assistant with them that is helping them in the back end work, then they have the time for creating a strong student and learner bond in the classrooms. That's
Yeah,
really
that's
well
so
said.
true. Yeah, that's so true. I really believe, like, when I heard that phrase from my husband, I thought, wow, like that's very true because what the AI cannot do, it can do so many things, right? Generate videos, images, podcasts, whole lesson plans, assessment, right? Be also coach for the student. And I see only benefits. I mean, of course, it comes also with a certain degree of responsibility, right? Like we have to be critical thinkers. If we have students who are underage, they have to be accompanied by a supervisor, right? Or we have to make sure, like, if they're using AI, right? For example, if they're being coached or there is a guided learning by AI, right? So it's safe. But also, in order to address those challenges, we also need to make sure we educate ourselves first, right? How can we teach students if we don't know it ourselves? And then make sure we include those ethical and practical demonstrations too, like showing, not just telling. And also, Nami, if I go back to my days in the classroom, actually, my teachers used to use chalk, right, on the blackboard. Even though I was born in 90s, like in my school, we used chalk. We didn't even have, let's say, interactive boards and things like that. And then when technology came into play, I think teachers were afraid that there was what was like calculators, then was mobile phones, then was recorded lessons, right? But then if you take a look at the research, right, if instead of teacher explaining something or teacher organizing the lesson, there will be just a recording, it seems like it does affect students the way they perceive information, how much they can retain. And I believe probably it's the same with AI. I don't know if there are any research already now, probably there is, right? We still need this, again, human bond, human connection, someone who will actually be in front of us, right? Dedicate their time and explain things in detail. And while doing that, I think there is nothing bad if we can use some AI tools for scaffolding, for accessibility, right? For helping students who struggle a little bit more with different ways of information, with like universal design for learning, right? So we could use, again, AI as our assistant, as our executive assistant. Like, who wouldn't like to have an assistant nowadays, especially teachers, right? Like to
Absolutely.
check materials, to produce materials, to help some students I know with different needs, right? So I see it, again, great benefit, but of course there's a degree of responsibility as well.
Absolutely. Ken, really well said. So here's a fun question for you. You can choose between the two. Is there any current book that you're reading that you really like, or is there any current movie that you watched that you really liked?
Ah, I love those questions. A nice surprise, Nava. Thank you for preparing them. So actually, I'm reading an interesting book. It's on my bed table. It's called Disability Visibility, right? So it's about awareness of people who are disabled in different ways, not necessarily physically or mentally, sometimes both, and how they also can and should take place in our world, how we all form a community, right? So I think that has been also very like mind opening for me, because where I come from, disability is seen as something necessarily bad, something necessary, let's say, that's going to impede your way to show up in life, right? So you don't see so many disabled people in certain parts of the world, right? People with different disabilities. Well, in Chile, the approach that the schools also help um, children with different disabilities to be incorporated in the learning process as much as they can. And that's something I've been taking a look at, for example, inclusion, that sometimes has become a big buzzword, right? So I've been like educating myself, going through different courses, right? Also, it was a part of my teaching degree, like I focused on that just to open a little bit the way I see the world and I see other people, especially students in the classroom, because we all come from different backgrounds. And I think it's very important that no matter how we were born, right, no matter what kind of skills we had, we can also be taken into consideration. We could be provided different opportunities to learn and be included.
That's a really good book. I would love to check that out because I feel people talk a lot about inclusion, and some of them like maybe just know the part of it that's people speak about, but there's always a depth to it. So it's always good to research and to read more about it and then connect to it at your emotional level and then talk about it. The book that I currently just finished rereading, is The Four Agreements. I think it's a really good book. Uh, it's like, the first one is being impeccable with your own word. Second is not taking it personally, what other people say. It's nothing because of you. It's just a projection of what their own reality is. And always it's good to take feedback. That's important. And the third one was not making assumptions. And fourth is always doing your best. So if you avoid judgment, guilt, and regret, you'll be able to do best in moments to moments. However, the book that always be my favorite is Ikigai. I think uh, it's a really good book. If you wanna, have a surge of motivation, Ikigai or Zen principles, I think the Japanese techniques are a really good way of you to remind yourself about getting back on track.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up. And I mean, those four agreements, I read that book, I think about 3 or 4 years ago. I read it in Spanish, right? It was really like groundbreaking, right? At first, I didn't get the idea, right? What the story is about, right? And then I realized like it was based, I think, on Toltec teachings. So I really like that connection to ancient philosophy, right? And what you're talking also about Zen or Ikigai, well, that's why I decided to study Japanese, well, the language, history, and culture, because it brings so many different learnings that we can actually take advantage of nowadays, right? The way people live in Japan, the way they behave, right? And that's something I think many companies worldwide also took and embedded either in their business strategies, right? Also in the school, right? There is also very interesting way kids are educated in Japan. And then I think we can all learn from different cultures, right?
Absolutely. I feel like when you come to a new place, because like since I've come and visited Finland, I've been here a few times before, and I've like adapted to the culture before as well. But since I've been living here for a long time now, I think what I've started adapting in my own lifestyle is the importance of maintaining a balance between a professional life and personal life, and being able to give time to your hobby. So that's how you're able to manage both things. Because I mean, of course, everybody wants to focus on the professional work and do well, but unless you're not happy, then what's the point of it? So it's important that you balance things out, give time to both things, and live a happy life. I think that's more important than anything.
Yeah, I like how you also highlighted the importance of hobby, right? That's something that also has been like basically like life changing because, well, mostly I work either remotely, right, or with technology. So then we do get tired and a bit overwhelmed, like screen time. Well, it happens to children, but also happens to adults. So I've been picking up some hobbies like ceramics or mosaic, and when I get my hands busy, right, this is where I can really rest, and this is where I can also get creative. And as you say, like it only matters while you're happy. So in order to keep ourselves happy, we also need to find this balance. And sometimes it's really tough, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so it's been a great discussion. And if I were to ask you, every meaningful journey is shaped by people and experiences that, of course, leave a very deep imprint in your lives. So when you reflect on your own professional path, who or what was that influenced you the most?
Yeah, I think if I think about a particular person, right, if I put it like in let's say in a human shape, right, that was my teacher, who was a teacher of Russian language and literature, right, and that's the person who shaped me in high school, right, because I think, and that's the person with whom I still keep in touch. Right, without all the years, right? So she continues being my source of inspiration because she blended it so many things in not just the lesson, the way she showed up as a person, the way that she always helped her students to look up and to strive for better. Because sometimes when you come from a small town where you don't see or you don't have so many opportunities, it's also sometimes you think, well, this is what it is. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like I shouldn't try better, right? Because anyway, like I was born here, so I should stay here and I should continue working here, even though maybe there are not so many available jobs, and maybe this is not exactly what I want for myself. So that person was for me a role model, right? Because she brought not only Russian books, right, or let's say literature or any, let's say, rules, because Russian language is a really tough one, but she also brought a lot of creativity. She introduced us to the world of art, and she even helped us with our CV, right? So she always gave us an extra step. She always was ready to walk extra mile. And that's the person I admire so much professionally. I think that's the person who also inspired me to be a teacher or to be a leader among teachers, right? The one who can light a little bit the way. And even though we struggle, and I mean, the imposter syndrome is also very real, especially in technological world, because you feel like if you don't stay up to date, you're going to miss it, you're going to lose it, right? And I think it's important to keep that human part, to keep that vulnerability. And I'm very grateful to my teacher. I'm very, very much grateful to her.
Wow, that's really deep and reminds me of like I think for me it's my mom. All in one, I would just say like she's my best critic and also the one who's always appreciating me. So if you have the one person who does both for you, I think that's the best thing because like when you know that someone's there to tell you what you could improve and know is there for you, whenever something's happening, is always there to support you and also someone that you look up to. I feel like for me that's my mom. So because I've always lived up to her motto that she says, never give up. So yeah, I feel like it's for me. So yeah,
That's
right.
great that you have this support at home, right? And also you have someone who can both support you and, as we say, like good critical friend, right? The one who can provide you with actionable feedback, right? The one also who watches your back, because it's not all about saying like beautiful words and always cheering up. Sometimes we need to also uncover these like ugly truths, right? And that's also part of the journey. It's part of the growth, right?
True that. Right. So thank you so much, Olga, for being on the podcast. And before we sign off, what would be one message that you would like to give to the audience listening to us right now?
Oh, that's a good one. Let me think. What could it be? Well, I think I would probably encourage people, like what I say to myself, like every day is a new opportunity, right? It doesn't matter if I didn't get it done yesterday. It doesn't matter if I failed before, right? I think that's important that even though we went through maybe some epic fails, that we continue trying things, right? And I see life as a series of small steps that we need to be persistent and consistent, and this is what's going to help us to get to the goal, right? I think that would be like the
Absolutely.
message for myself and for others too.
Yeah, absolutely. Reminds me of that Japanese quote, fall 7 times, stand up 8. So never give up and keep on continuing and be happy.
That's a beautiful saying. I also remember that one. Hmm.
Yep, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining and listening to this episode. Thank you, Olga, for being on the episode. And hope you all have a great day. Till then, each one teach 10. Kiitos.